Welcome back to WCB Jazz Vinyl. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is the brand new reissue label Time Traveler Records and their Muse series, and the release we're going to talk about specifically is Kenny Barron's Sunset to Dawn. Album sounds fantastic, so let me just say that up front. I'm excited to talk through the release, give you some more details about exactly how it sounds. Before we get started, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Doesn't cost a thing, and not only will it let you know when I post a video, it also helps others like us who are interested in this great music find my content. All right, so I introduced this series a couple of videos ago, but for those who missed it, what Time Traveler Records is doing is they are reissuing titles from the Muse Records catalog, and they're doing that all analog kind of sort of high quality format, right? Very much akin to a craft recordings type of format. So they've announced 3 releases thus far, but they've committed to releasing additional titles every couple of months. So if Muse Records is one of those labels that you like a lot of their content, would definitely recommend staying on top of their release calendar, because who knows when they're going to put out the next announcement. But the first 3 titles are Sunset to Dawn by Kenny Barron, The Free Slave by Roy Brooks, and then it's Cosmos Nucleus by Carlos Garnett. Each, I think, fantastic places to start for this reissue series. And all 3 of these are coming out very soon on October 17th. So I want to talk about just some of the details, because I know that I alluded to the fact that this is like a high quality reissue format. And so what do I mean by that? Well, the details are that these are mastered from the original tapes by Matthew Luthans at the Mastering Lab. They're being pressed on 180 gram vinyl. They're being pressed at Optimal Media, accompanied by glossy tip-on jackets by Stoughton. And then they actually have new liner note sort of essays, like a single sheet that they insert in the jacket as well. So these are not gatefold, maybe a little bit more like the OJC series in terms of the cover and everything. These are being described as a limited release, and I don't quite know what that means, honestly, except that it could be that they don't plan to keep them in print in terms of just doing continual presses over a period of time. So I guess know that. I mean, theoretically it could sell out, but I don't think, you probably don't have to worry too much. But who really knows? As far as the folks who are behind this Time Traveler Records, it's actually going to be some familiar faces, especially if you follow my channel. So Zev Feldman is one of the producers. We know Zev from Resonance Records, from Elemental, from Jazz Detective. So he is one of the producers. The other is James Batsford, who owns Newland. And Newland is that fantastic UK-based label that's been putting out so much great music by Kenny Dorham, Charles Mingus. They actually have the Chet Baker box set, which as soon as my copy comes in, because I think as of the recording, I think it's released today, so I can't wait to get that. I'll definitely cover that as well. But yeah, so those are the producers. The material is licensed from Craft Recordings and Concord, and to some degree, this feels like what Time Traveler is almost a couple of producers that are then collaborating with Craft on some of these releases from their catalog. That's kind of what this sort of feels like. So again, lots of people involved who know what they're doing, and I think that oftentimes yields great results, and this is a good example of when it does. So like I said, there's 3 titles, and with these 3 titles that I mentioned, I think they're great places to start for the series, because they achieve very different things in terms of tone. So we don't just have 3 albums that are kind of similar and it represents, say, one faction of Muse. It's kind of it's like a good spread of styles, I think. And so I think it's a great sort of introduction to folks who maybe aren't as familiar with Muse Records, because it gives you this kind of wider span of releases, so you can kind of get a sense of the type of music that they were putting out at the time. So again, the album title is Sunset to Dawn, and this is what it looks like. It is titled as such because the first track on side 1 is called Sunset, and the last track on side 2 is called Dawn. Get it? So the lineup on this album includes obviously Kenny Barron as the leader, Bob Cranshaw, Freddie Waits, Richard Landrum, and Warren Smith. And as far as instrumentation, what you have here is piano, bass, and drums, and then they're joined by 2 percussionists, though Warren Smith also plays vibraphone. There's also a pan flute on here that I confess I don't know exactly who's playing. It could be Warren Smith as well. So I know one of the things that people care about is covers. And I kind of talked about, yeah, it's Stoughton, and we know that they always do a great job. And I know a lot of people say, you can't play the cover, but I think having great packaging, I think adds confidence that what you're getting is a high quality item overall. And I think that they did a great job. Obviously, you can see this is a glossy cover, and it is this sort of high quality construction. You can sort of see how the cover was constructed, the fold kind of creases in here and stuff. And yeah, it just feels really sturdy. I do have an original pressing of this album, and I took it out just to see if there were any differences, and I honestly didn't really notice any differences. I mean, the original is not it's not glossy, it's matte, but I don't think you certainly don't lose anything. And in many ways, I think this is just a higher quality. The newer reissue is a higher quality cover overall than the original. As far as the back, I mean, yeah, they updated the logo and the catalog number, as so many of these reissue labels do. But otherwise, it's the same liner notes on the back. It's just that, again, with this with this reissue, you get this additional sheet of liner notes, and sort of essays, right? Which I think is great. Me, I love to have as much history as I possibly can about some of these releases. So this is the sort of thing that I actually read. I don't know if everybody reads all the additional content all the time, but I'm the sort of person who always goes right to it, just to learn as much as I can about some of these releases. So, one credit that I want to make sure I reference actually is the engineer Paul Goodman. So Paul Goodman may not be the name that Rudy Van Gelder was, but he does a really fantastic job here. So he had previously worked, as far as I can tell, for RCA on a number of jazz as well as classical releases. So he did the Sonny Rollins releases, Sonny Meets Hawk, which was the Rollins and Coleman Hawkins release. He did Our Man in Jazz. These are like early 60s, maybe like 62, 63, something like that. He also did a bunch of the RCA Victor Red Seal recordings. So for those of you who like classical music, Red Seal has a great reputation as a series for classical music that RCA Victor put out. And so knowing that he kind of was tackling some of those beautiful classical recordings, I think is a good sign. He actually eventually won a Grammy as well for a classical music album. I think maybe closer to the 80s. So man had a lot of cred. He also did in the jazz space anyway. He did Members Don't Get Weary by Max Roach. He did the Jazz Composers Orchestra, which is a sort of like, it was like a double disc, almost like box that Cecil Taylor put out. He did maybe a handful of records for Muse overall. So this wasn't the only record he was on, but he also wasn't like the singular Muse engineer. But obviously he did great work for them. But enough about the engineer. The other important credit here is of course Kenny Barron. So this was his first album as a leader, and his next two albums as a leader would also be for Muse. Each of these three are phenomenal albums, and I actually hope that Time Traveler tackles each of them at some point. So Kenny Barron certainly had been playing a lot, even though this was his first opportunity as a leader. And in fact, he'd been playing for over a decade professionally on recordings prior to Sunset to Dawn. So I think the first album that he played on was his brother Bill Barron's release, The Tenor Stylings of Bill Barron, which was put out for Savoy in 1961. It's quickly followed by Modern Windows, also for Savoy. Kenny was on Dave Burns' self-titled for Vanguard. He played on Funk Dumpling by Perry Robinson. But he just had a lot of sort of wide-ranging credits. He played with Dizzy. He played with James Moody. He was on Joe Henderson's Tetragonal. He was on Freddie Hubbard's High Blues Pressure. So again, ton of great albums, ton of great musicians. And he had most recently been playing in Yusef Lateef's band on both Nubian Lady as well as The Hump. And I wanted to bring this up specifically because I think that the usage of auxiliary percussion and the kind of organic nature of this album, of Sunset to Dawn, which I'm about to get into, is perhaps something he carried forward from those experiences playing in Yusef Lateef's band. So I want to touch on that point just in a little bit more detail. So I think that the effect you get here is a record that has a lot of what, again, I'll call organic sound. So the auxiliary percussion by Warren Smith, by Richard Landrum, I think it really adds some great texture to the music, especially really throughout, but especially on a few tracks. There's Dolores Street SF, which I think is just referring to Dolores Street, San Francisco. One of the reasons why I think that the music here succeeds as well as it does, in fact, is the stereo sound stage. So I think Dolores is a great example of that. Sort of just really nice spreading out of the musicians across the two channels. And oftentimes those percussionists are even themselves just in different channels. So you might, for example, got like congas out of the left and maybe cymbals out of the right. On the opener Sunset, there's percussion in the left and like panpipes or pan flute in the right. And again, I think that it's one thing to do this haphazardly, but I think that by effectively spreading the musicians through the two channels, it has the ability to create this kind of environment that kind of sort of wraps around you as a listener, that I think creates a more immersive experience. So if I'm thinking back to my initial comment about these two albums, about these three albums being very different, right? The first three albums for this Muse series. What makes this one unique, I think, is that organic sound, that immersive experience, and I think that, and I just think that it's a really fantastic record overall. All right, so one of the questions you may be wondering, of course, is how does this compare to the original pressing? Is it a worthwhile release? Should you wait and try to find that original pressing? Well, it could be a little bit of a moot point, and the reason why I say that is because not only with Sunset to Dawn, but with the other two as well, each of these have gotten just really difficult to get, especially in great condition, and you'll often find yourself spending more than $100 just to get one of the originals. So for those reasons, I think it's important to talk about how does it sound in comparison, right? Does it sound better? More importantly, does it sound worse? And I have to say, I don't have as much to say here as maybe I have had on some of the other, sort of A/B kind of, shootout types of discussions that I've done, especially in some of the Blue Note recordings. In my opinion, the original pressing, this right here, was done very, very well just on its own. And yet, I don't think that anything is missing from the reissue in comparison. Now, obviously, with the original, what you're going to get is a higher likelihood that there's going to be a few pops or something like that, just because it's difficult to find old vinyl in great condition. And so for that reason, obviously, if it's brand new, you're less likely going to have those issues. But otherwise, in terms of the music, are there noticeable differences? No. And maybe the better way to put it would be that the reissue sounds every bit as great as the original pressing. So, at least on my setup, listen to them both. And I didn't have anything to complain about. There's nothing to complain about either from a manufacturing standpoint. Like some of these reissues, they come with slight warps, or they come with, a little bit of noise here or there. And I just didn't have any of that experience, with this. To me, listening to this and having the item, it feels very similar again to some of these other well-executed series by Craft Recordings, and it seems like Time Traveler, brought forward the right partners to put this out, because everything from the the mastering to the actual physical production of the item, everything seems to have been done really, really well. And I wish that I could say, here's some of those like finer, those like little tiny differences between the two pressings in terms of sonics or something like that. And I just didn't come across any of those. And that's a good thing, right? I think that a great reissue, does one of the elements of a great reissue is when it does the original item justice. And I think that at least with Sunset to Dawn, I think it definitely achieved that. So those are my thoughts on this particular release. I will be doing videos on the other two, and we'll find out if there's anything else that I can say about some of these comparisons. And obviously, I'll give you some context around those other releases as well over the coming weeks, leading up to, again, the release on October 17th. So that's it for now. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I'll see you next time.